Donald Trump's been working around the clock since he got back into office, and in case you didn't know, he actually ended 6 wars in 6 months. These nations had been fighting for decades, and then he comes in and solves it all in a blink of an eye. I mean, clearly he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. Alright, so you could probably hear the sarcasm in my voice because surprise, surprise, it's not that simple. Honestly, I'd even say it's not really the case at all, but since I'm just a biased human being sitting in front of a microphone in my pajamas and can't cut through all the spin, I'm gonna let AI do it for us. So here's the plan. I'm gonna ask AI to break down each war that Donald Trump claims that he ended and show us what really happened, and then ask straight up, if it were up to AI, would it give him the Nobel Peace Prize? But before we get into all of that, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share this video on your socials if you find it interesting so that more people can check it out. Alright, thanks in advance, and now let's get into it. And here we go. As you can see, I've already had ChatGPT research all 6 wars that Trump claims he ended, so everything's fully up to date. And now we can jump into the first question. It needs to be clear, straightforward, unbiased, no sugarcoating, no fluff, no spin, none of that. And yeah, I also checked which wars that Trump ended before recording, just so I know exactly which countries to ask about. Now, let's split this into 2 parts, and we'll begin with the first 3. Israel-Iran, India-Pakistan, and Thailand-Cambodia. Did Trump really make a difference in ending these wars? Let's find out. The Israel-Iran conflict in June was the most serious and dangerous of the 3. This wasn't just a border skirmish, it was a direct clash between 2 bitter enemies with nuclear ambitions on the line. Israel went after Iran's nuclear sites, Iran fired back with missiles and drones, and it could have spiraled into a full regional war. Trump stepped in with US bombers hitting Iranian targets and then pushed both sides into a ceasefire. Did that stop the shooting? Yes. Did it end the war? Absolutely not. The ceasefire worked in the short term, but Iran's nuclear program wasn't destroyed. Israel still sees Iran as its existential threat, and Iran isn't dropping its ambitions. Trump managed to freeze the conflict for now. It was a win in the sense that people stopped dying and the fighting ended, but it wasn't any kind of real solution. His bragging about obliterating Iran's nukes was pure showmanship. The truth is, Iran's program survived, and everyone knows it. He gets credit for pressing pause, not for solving anything permanent. India-Pakistan is different. These two have been at each other's throats for decades, mostly over Kashmir, and every few years there's a flare-up. This May was one of those times. Bombings, shelling, airstrikes, civilians dead. Trump claims he ended that war. Reality check, both countries used their hotline, their generals talked, and they decided to stop shooting after a few days. That's how it usually goes. Pakistan even thanked Trump for his role, but India flat out denied that the US had anything to do with it. That says it all. The US was engaged, sure, warnings were passed, calls were made, and maybe Washington's involvement nudged things along, but to pretend that Trump personally ended the war is just not true. The 2 countries themselves decided it wasn't worth escalating into something bigger, especially knowing they're both nuclear powers. So, if you cut through the noise, Trump was more of a spectator than the referee. Thailand-Cambodia is one where Trump's role was real and visible. This was a messy little war over borders that got hot fast. Artillery, airstrikes, people fleeing their homes. It lasted just a few days, and ASEAN was scrambling to cool it down. Trump directly called the leaders and threw economic pressure on the table. That kind of blunt transactional approach actually worked in this case. Both sides pulled back, agreed to a ceasefire, and even praised him for pushing it. Credit where it's due, that was a solid piece of intervention. Does it mean the border dispute is solved? No, but Trump absolutely did help slam the brakes on a live shooting war before it spread. So looking at these 3, Israel-Iran still has the same unresolved problems. India-Pakistan was Trump taking credit for what the countries themselves settled, and Thailand-Cambodia was the one where he actually made a real difference. That's the honest breakdown. Well, it's kind of funny how Trump chases after every conflict to take credit for solving it, even when countries handled it themselves, like India and Pakistan. But alright, let's not waste any time and move on to the other three wars: Rwanda-Congo, Armenia-Azerbaijan, and Egypt-Ethiopia. The Rwanda-DR Congo conflict is the trickiest. Trump bragged that he ended a 30-year war by brokering a deal between Rwanda and Congo in June. The reality? He did get both governments to sign a peace accord in Washington, with Rwanda promising to pull troops out of Congo and the US dangling access to Congo's mineral wealth as a sweetener. On paper, that's a win, but on the ground, nothing has really stopped. The M23 rebels, backed by Rwanda, are still fighting and even carried out massacres after Trump's White House ceremony. Rwanda hasn't fully pulled back, and eastern Congo is still a war zone. Calling it ended is flat out false. Trump froze the government's direct confrontation for now, but the rebels didn't sign anything, and they're the ones burning villages. If you look at the facts, civilians are still dying, and the White House ceremony turns out to be more of a photo op than a real breakthrough. The Armenia-Azerbaijan case is different. This one actually was a visible diplomatic moment. In August, Trump hosted both leaders at the White House, and they signed a deal that included opening a US-controlled transit corridor through Armenia, giving Azerbaijan access to its Nakhchivan exclave. Both sides smiled for the cameras, shook hands, and thanked Trump. Symbolically, it's huge. But again, is the war over? Not even close. The deal didn't address displaced Armenians, prisoner swaps, or the deep scars from Nagorno-Karabakh. It was more about trade routes and geopolitics than reconciliation. Trump packaged it as proof he could do what Russia couldn't: force a peace. That's true to a point, since Russia's influence in the Caucasus has waned and the US got the spotlight. But if you talk to Armenians in the diaspora or locals who lost everything in the Karabakh, they don't see this as peace. They see it as Washington cutting a business deal and pretending it's history. Still, compared to his other claims, this is one of the few where he did secure a formal agreement. Then there's Egypt and Ethiopia. Trump counts this one as another war he stopped, but let's be honest, it's not a war, it's a dispute over the Nile Dam. Ethiopia built the massive GERD project, Egypt fears it'll choke off its water supply, and they've been at each other's throats in negotiations for over a decade. When Trump stepped in, he openly sided with Egypt, saying he'd want his water if he were them. That thrilled Cairo, but Addis Ababa wasn't impressed. Ethiopia has already been filling the dam, and there's no binding deal. The tensions are still there. What Trump did was inject US pressure back into the talks and give Egypt political cover, but he hasn't solved anything. At best, he can say he helped prevent things from flaring into open conflict. But to sell it as ending a war, that's pure exaggeration. So across these three, Rwanda-Congo is ongoing bloodshed sold as a win. Armenia-Azerbaijan was a flashy signing that left core wounds open, and Egypt-Ethiopia isn't even a war, but got counted anyway. Bold claims, shaky results, that's the real picture. Alright, well, just to be honest, who actually looked into all of these peace deals in detail? I kind of figured it's not the way Trump sells it, but I never really dug into it for myself. Anyway, now we know better, and I think it's time for the big question. One that we probably already know how to answer, but it's still fun to see AI's take. So, does Donald Trump deserve a Nobel Peace Prize or not? But before I ask that, take a moment to hit the like button if you're enjoying the video, and subscribe if you haven't already. That's honestly the most important thing you can do for the channel, and it's the best way to say thanks for the content that I'm always putting together for you. Thanks a lot, and now, let's get to the big question. Alright, let's see if Donald Trump really deserves a Nobel Peace Prize or not. If it were up to AI, would he actually get one? Let's find out. If I'm being totally honest, no, I wouldn't give Trump a Nobel Peace Prize. The idea just doesn't hold up when you look at what actually happened versus what he claims. He runs around saying he ended 6 or 7 wars, but when you dig into it, most of those conflicts are either still burning under the surface, were cooled down by the countries themselves, or were never full wars to begin with. What he's done is slap his name on a bunch of fragile ceasefires and disputes, then parade them as if he brought peace to the world. That's not Nobel material. And let's not kid ourselves. Trump probably couldn't find half of these countries on a map if you handed him one. He even went on record mixing up Armenia with Albania, bragging about ending an Armenia-Azerbaijan war. That alone shows he's not actually invested in the details of these conflicts. He's not reading briefing books or carefully working through the diplomacy. He's winging it, cutting deals where he can, and then turning around and selling them like the greatest achievements in history. That's not statesmanship, that's show business. Look at the Rwanda-Congo situation. He called it the end of a 30-year war, yet civilians were still being killed in large numbers by rebels just weeks later. Same with Egypt and Ethiopia. He dropped in, said Egypt should have its water, and suddenly it's on his list of wars he ended. You can't count every tense disagreement in the world as a war just to pad your resume. And the biggest hole in his peace president image is the war he promised to end in 24 hours, Ukraine versus Russia. Not only did he not stop it, but he's cozying up to Putin in ways that make the situation even worse. He's been chasing a dream that Putin would listen to him, while in reality Trump's sending signals that basically tell Russia they can push harder. Same with Israel-Gaza, where Israel has intensified its offensive and civilians are still dying. That's not peacekeeping, that's throwing gasoline on the fire. So if Trump were actually to broker a real end to the Ukraine-Russia war or deliver a lasting solution to Israel-Gaza, that would be a different story. That's the kind of achievement that would make the Nobel conversation serious. But he hasn't done that. He stacked up a few short-lived ceasefires and some flashy photo ops, then exaggerated them into world historical achievements. It's obvious he didn't really dig into these conflicts, he just likes the optics of being seen as the deal maker. So no, he doesn't deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. What he deserves credit for are a few tactical interventions that prevented wars from dragging on, like Thailand-Cambodia. But Nobel level? Absolutely not. That award should go to someone who brings real, lasting peace, not someone who confuses Albania with Armenia and calls a pause button a victory. And that's pretty much it. I kind of laughed out loud imagining Trump trying to point out all of those countries on a map. And seriously, if he actually ended the Israel-Gaza conflict or the Ukraine-Russia war, would you be okay with giving him the Nobel Peace Prize? Let me know your thoughts about that in the comments section down below. And don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit that join button if you want to support the channel directly. After that, let's hang out for about another 15 minutes and see what the AI thinks about Donald Trump's mental health and whether or not he can finish his second term without cognitive decline. All right, thanks for watching. Click on that pop-up, and I'll be waiting for you there.